Got it? Whatever. This time I need a motion to return to open session.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. All those in favor said motion, saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. This time we'll stand for a moment of silence and we'll do our pledge. Right? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, this time I need a motion for approval of the minutes of the November 9th meeting we had.
So moved.
Got a motion and got a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor said motion. I'm saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. All right, this time we're down to our financial report. We're down to Mr. Willis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening.
Good evening.
Prior to the meeting, you've been provided the November monthly review for the financials. And as you'll see that we are tracking very similar to where we were in the previous year, considering we are under the continuing resolution. I'll be happy to entertain any questions and note any comments regarding that.
Any questions? Hearing none, move on.
All right, and at this time, I will introduce Mr. Harris Darver from Darver Kelly LLP, who is with us from Greenville, zooming in to present the results of the 1920 audit report. And in advance, I just want to say thanks to Harris for joining us tonight and for the work that he and his team have put into the audit and working with us over the past few months. So I will turn it over to Harris now to share with you the information from the audit. He'll be sharing the screen so that you can follow along, and we'll take any questions once that is complete. So Harris, turning it over to you.
Can everybody hear me?
Sure.
Okay, I feel like that's the standard intro for Zoom calls now. Who can hear me? And everybody can see the screen, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, well, once again, I appreciate y'all having me to present the audit. Unfortunately, due to COVID and the growing cases, I could not be there today, but I am pleased to present the audit report. Hopefully this presentation, I'll try and keep it short and simple for you, and I'll jump right into it. First and foremost, the audit presentation that we'll go over today includes the three main reports. So in the entire audit package that you've received of approximately 120, 140 pages, there are three reports that are ours. The rest of the financial statements are those of management. We'll then look at the financial position of the government-wide activities, which is the district as a whole, and then we'll take a look at the general fund, as that is where government control lies. On the first audit report, which is on pages 1 to 3 of the financial report that you have, pages 1 through 3 is the independent auditor's report. First and foremost, it's an audit of the financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2020. And in that, we discuss management's responsibilities in that they are responsible for the financial statements in accordance with the accounting principles, which include the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal controls. It goes on to say that the auditor's responsibility is to express an opinion on those financial statements based on the audit in accordance with our own standards. We do not express an opinion on the effectiveness of the district's internal controls. Moving on to the actual opinion itself is that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position and respective changes in financial position of the district as of and for the year ended June 30th, 2020. As most of you are aware, this is known as a clean or unmodified report, so we're happy to present that as well. Moving to page 99 in the back of the financial packet is the second of the three reports. This is the report on internal control and, on internal control and compliance. The first one, internal control over financial reporting, is we use internal controls in order to plan and perform our audit as a way to determine audit procedures necessary for expressing an opinion on the financial statements. Once again, as mentioned previously, we do not express an opinion on the effectiveness of the district's internal controls. We simply identify deficiencies should they exist. Deficiencies in internal controls are those where there is a design or operation of control deficiency where it doesn't allow management to prevent or detect misstatements on a timely basis. And a material weakness is those where there's a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement in the district's financial statements won't be prevented, detected, or corrected. We did identify one deficiency in our audit this year, 2020-01. We'll go over that in a little more detail in a couple slides. Moving on to the compliance section of this report, as part of retaining the same assurance about the financial statements, we do perform tests of compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, grant agreements, and so forth that have a direct effect on the district's financial statements. We do not express an opinion on compliance with provisions of those laws. We strictly report if we find any deficiencies noted there. The results of our testing disclose no instances of non-compliance in our audit. Moving on to the third and final report is the report on compliance for major programs. These are the federal awards that the district receives. First and foremost, the report is we audit the district's compliance with requirements as described by the uniform guidance that's prescribed by the OMB Comptroller General for each major program for the year ended 2020. The major programs this year that we tested were the Special Education Cluster, or as you might know it as IDEA, as well as the Title I program. In this report, management's responsibility is they are responsible for compliance with the statutes, regulations, and terms and conditions of their federal awards. The auditor's responsibility is to express an opinion on compliance for each of the district's major programs based on the audit in accordance with our standards. Lastly, with the opinion on each major program is that the district complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements mentioned above, as of and for the year ended June 30th, 2020. Once again, this is known as a clean or unmodified report. Lastly, in this report is the internal control over compliance. In order to plan and perform our audit, we do evaluate internal controls as considered to determine the procedures that are needed to express the opinion on compliance listed above. We do not express an opinion on the effectiveness of the district's internal controls over compliance, strictly noting deficiencies as they are noted. We did not find any there. Moving on to the deficiency that we noted previously, the material weakness 2020-001 is related to payroll-related liabilities, and the district's design of internal control procedures surrounding the reconciliation of payroll-related liabilities, as well as the process with vendor billing invoices, wasn't designed so that it failed to appropriately meet the control objective of identifying all misstatements. I will note that the district has implemented procedures to ensure that those reconciliations are completed, and that they are going to improve upon the process by implementing additional procedures to include a reconciliation of the actual detailed billing invoices to the district's records on a regular basis. And I believe Brad can speak to that, but he is in process of implementing those new changes as well this year. I'll pause here for any questions as I've gone through the three reports as well as deficiency. And if there aren't any, we'll jump into some of the numbers of the district for the year ended 2020. Moving on to the financial position of the government-wide. This is the government-wide position of the district. This is on page 12 of the financial report that you have in front of you. The government-wide position shows the district's overall position, including long-term liabilities such as debt and pension and OPEB, as well as capital assets. So I'll fly through these pretty quickly. The assets of $86.3 million. Of that, capital assets represent $54 million. Deferred outflows are $18 million. Liabilities of $214 million. with accounts payable and payroll-related liabilities of 7.5, and then bond-related debt of 48.4 million, deferred inflows of 12 million, and a net position of negative 121.7 million. Some of you, if you remember from previous years, the impacts of the pension and OPEB liabilities that are the district's proportionate share of the state pension and OPEB, those are required to be represented on the district's financial statements. Those account for an approximate net impact of negative $151 million. So of that net position, negative 121, truly you show a $30 million positive net position. So please take into consideration those pension and OPEB liabilities. Moving on to the changes in financial position for the government-wide, revenues of approximately 84.4 million, with operating grants and contributions of right at 50 million, with property taxes around 24 million. Expenses of 82 million, with instruction accounting for 45 million, support services of 31 million, and food services of approximately 4.2, with a net change in just over $2 million for the year. Once again, I'll repeat, that was the government-wide, which takes into account the district as a whole, including all short-term and long-term and all funds included. I'll now talk about the general fund, excuse my typo listed above, but the general fund balances and activities that are presented. I know there's a lot of focus on the general fund. Assets approximate 18.4 million. Cash represents approximately 10.4 of that. Liabilities, all liabilities are related to accounts payable as well as payroll-related liabilities for summer teachers. Those approximate $7.5 million. Deferred inflows, which are directly related to the deferred tax positions for property taxes, is 1.8 million, with fund balances of 9 million. Of that fund balance, non-spendable portion is 249. Those are for items like prepaid items. Assigned fund balance is 373,000, and the unassigned fund balance is $8.5 million. Looking at the general fund revenues and expenditures, revenues approximate just under $59 million. Local taxes are approximately $13 million, with state sources and state funding of approximately $42 million. Expenditures equaled $60.2 million, with instruction accounting for 35.6 of that and support services of 24.3. This general fund did receive other financing sources and uses. These are indirect costs or other transfers from other funds of approximately $2.3 million, leaving a change in fund balance of approximately 892,000 increase for the year. I think I had the slide get out of order. I apologize. But that presents the concluding financial position. I will say, I think I had a slide get deleted. Excuse me, let me back up for it. Of the $8.5 million that's listed here, the unassigned fund balance, the district, if you remember, the proviso that went into effect in 2016, that the Department of Education requires districts to maintain 1 month of operating expenditures, or approximately 8.3% in fund balance. Happy to report that the district well exceeds that. You are approximately 17%, I believe, in that calculation. So you approximate 2 months, or doubling the minimum requirement by the state. I apologize for a few technical glitches with a slide or two missing, but I think I've covered all of the information. If you have any questions, I am here for your opportunity to answer those for you.
Anyone?
Without any, I'll turn it back over to Brad, and I appreciate your time this evening.
Harris, again, thank you so much for the time that you and your staff took in helping us through the audit. It was very efficient this year. And thank you for working with any of the staff members that we had as we, dug into a lot of information. There's always a lot of information to get for you, and I appreciate your patience and working with us through any of the matters, when on site and doing work remotely. So I do appreciate that. I don't think I have any more to add to the information that was presented. I would thank the board as well for your patience as we've gone through the process and receiving this information. And we hope that you see that we have continued to do very well and trending in the right direction. And we know that we've always got some things to improve upon. We're working very hard to do those with the help of our auditors as well. So again, thank you. All right, we ready to move on? Yeah, all right. The next item is a recommendation from the administration in response to some trends regarding the pandemic and rewarding those folks that mean so much to our district and many districts across the state. So we wanted to bring you a recommendation and based on some of your questions as well from the board, wanted to bring you a recommendation related to employee pandemic incentives this evening. All right, so Dr. Goodwin and I and a couple of other members of administration got together and we talked about what the right thing would be to do and what would be realistic for us as a district to present to you this evening for incentives to the employees of Chesterfield County School District. So there are many different ways that districts across the state are approaching this. And it really depends on what their makeup is, size of employee base, availability of funds, and what the most, I won't say the easiest way, but the most the most efficient way to look at coming up with a way to issue these incentives or bonuses. So we settled on looking at flat dollar amounts. And as you see, those are $500 and $250. And I'll take each column, I'll take the first column of $500 initially and talk to you about what is included there. So $500 incentive would be for those employees who are full-time, who were full-time in FY20, the previous fiscal year, and remain full-time in FY21. Those employees who are working at least 6 hours daily. So in order to be considered full-time would be a minimum of 6 hours daily or a 0.75 FTE. But that employee would also have to be working at least the standard contract days for their position. And the reason we put those on two different bullets is we may have someone working at least a 6 hour day. However, they may be working only 100 days out of the fiscal year or 110, if that makes sense. So again, employees who were full-time in FY20 and remain full-time in the current year, working at least a 6 hour day and working the minimum number of standard contract days for their position, at least that number. So the $250 bonus would be for employees who were part-time in FY20 and are now transitioned to full-time in 21. Would also be for employees who were part-time in FY20 and remain part-time in FY21. Employees who are newly hired for FY21, the current year, full-time or part-time, and still employed with the district. And again, we go back to the 6 hours and the number of days. Obviously, if at least 6 hours a day is full-time, then anything that is less than 6 hours daily or is working less than those standard contract days for their position will be considered part-time. So I'll pause right there and see if you have any questions about those bullets. And I will give you some additional information on the next pages that may help you understand some of that as well. Okay, so what comes with this recommendation, or how are we approaching it, or what provisions are included in this recommendation? So This recommendation comes with these provisions. It does not differentiate among classifications. So it does not differentiate between certified and classified staff. It's the best way to put it. We're looking at this across the board with those dollar amounts based on the full-time and part-time designations, as well as a few of those caveats that we would need to be looking at. It does not include substitutes. Also, employees on long-term leave will need to be evaluated case by case, and they could be excluded, may be excluded depending on duration of leave during the pandemic. And then obviously roles for those who are duly employed will be combined for determination of full-time or part-time. That comes into play if we have someone working a part-time position at a school, but they also drive a bus, for instance. And then this recommendation would have us issuing these payments only subject to the required payroll taxes, which would be FICA. And our plans would be to issue these payments to the employees' primary direct deposit accounts when we return before the normal January 15th pay date. And live checks would only be cut in limited cases if someone does not have that direct deposit set up. So we would anticipate cutting this somewhere around maybe that January 8th for Friday, if we can do that, or January the 11th on the Monday would be the release.
No way to do it before Christmas.
There is no way for us to turn this around before Christmas. And our view on that, bringing it to you at this board meeting before we release, is we actually do 2 payrolls before we leave for break. So we are making sure that those get done and are on time by the 15th of this month. And we would need to have this to the bank actually basically tomorrow for us to be able to get the direct deposit done before we leave on Friday the 18th. So, and our point of view was it would at least be a good sentiment to our employees to get them some payment before we have that January payroll upon return, so that we do cut down on some of that wait time from payroll to payroll. And I'll just add that if approved, we will certainly dig into the details. We certainly do have to do some digging in and some identification upon this model once approved to make sure that we get everything in line. And presently, we do project the cost to be in the neighborhood of the $500,000 range, and we would rely on general fund to do this.
Brad, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Is there, in the memo that was sent out earlier, it says employees hired prior to September the 1st. Now, we apparently that's not in effect based on your presentation here this afternoon, this evening.
That is correct. We had some additional discussions once we had looked at that a little further, and once we settled on the model, we did not have any of those cutoff dates in there.
Okay, all right, good. So an employee that was hired in October was still, if they were a part-time, they'll still get $250. If they were full-time, they'll still get $250. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I got a question. So we couldn't cut checks. I know you can't direct deposit, but you can't cut checks.
Repeat that question again, please.
Checks not be cut before Christmas.
I'm very concerned about doing that because we still have to get everybody in place. We have to hard key all of these, and I would feel very hesitant about making a lot of mistakes with our time frame that we have.
Mr. Vic, part of the thought process too was our employees are going to get a payroll on the 17th of December. They don't draw another payroll until January 15th. That if we could get that in their pocket right when they came back, it could help them sort of bridge that long gap between payrolls. That was our logic.
Sweeney here again. How do we compare? You said that you checked with a number of other districts. What are other districts doing beside us? We know about Marlboro County. That has been that's news all over the PD. But what about the other districts?
There are a substantial amount of districts doing this, and the amounts that they are doing and the methods that they are doing this range very widely. You have folks who are less than ours, and there are those who are much more than ours based on their ability to fund much more. There are folks who are doing this and they're actually splitting it between a current payment or a short-term payment, and then doing another half later on. So it ranges widely, and I would say that we are about average when it comes to the amounts.
If I could also add, for instance, Darlington County's plan looks very similar to ours. Kershaw County chose to go with the percent model. They gave 1% to all employees. So a custodian who's making $14,000 a year gets $140. A teacher who's making $65,000 a year gets $650. Then you go over to a district that you would think would be a very affluent district that might be doing a large one. And I hate to call them out, but Fort Mill School District, one of the more affluent school districts in our state, is doing $150 for each employee. So it's really all over the table as far as what's going on. Some districts have chosen, if you've been there, less than 10 years, you get one amount. If you've been there more than 10, but less than 20, you get a certain amount. And if you've been there more than 20 years, you get a certain amount. But, we chose to go with the equitable plan is sort of what we were trying to look at.
Okay. Now, let me understand this now with FICA here. That's going to be a cost to the district. But we got, based on your number here, we have 950 full-time employees that will receive a check of $500. They will receive a check with $500 with no taxes or anything. This is $500 straight up, right?
The employee is responsible for half of the FICA. So it'll be a reduction of that amount by 7.65%. So a $500 gross check is going to come in, and I believe it's just under $462. It's around $461.
Yeah, right. That'll be about that. Okay. And we got 125 part-time employees.
Well, those were preliminary numbers, and we're working on the identification of all of those right now, and we need to we've got to fine-tune that based on the approval of this initiative.
Thank you.
Mr. Willer, this is Darren Coleman. I was back to what Mr. Vic asked earlier. You say it will be a hard push to kind of have a hard check for them before Christmas?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Brad, so the only thing that's coming out on this is going to be the FICA. There's no impact to, nothing's going to have to go to the other fringe outside of that, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
No impact from retirement or other fringe items.
Okay, all right then.
Did we look up, no, sorry, you've answered that. Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the employee pandemic incentive as presented with the necessary determinations that they have to do.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion and a second on the floor here. Any more discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor say the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, thank you. I'm sorry, excuse me. Mr. Wheeler, thank you for your time in this. Dr. Goodwin, thank you also. We're going to be able to get our employees some additional money this time. Is that all you got, Mr. Wheeler? That is all. Thank you all for your consideration and your time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we get down to our personnel report. Dr. Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, at this time, I'd like to recommend the following exhibits for your approval. Exhibits A through F.
So moved.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Dick, I think, and Mr. Teal. I think Mr. Dick got the motion, and Mr. Teal got the second. And at this time, I need to call for the vote. All those in favor say motion, saying aye.
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 All right.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, got that. Dean?
Yes. All right. Just to give you a quick update on the COVID-19. Currently, we're in week 17 of the school year. And as you will notice, and as you've seen, week 14, 15, and week 16 really been challenging weeks. We've had a lot of substantial increases in our positive COVID cases, isolations, quarantines, staff, as well as students. And based on the numbers that we received today, again, at the start of week 17, I really don't have a reason to think that the pattern will stop right now. This will be a high week as well. So looking at our first slide, our staff and positive cases. Week 16 is actually 11. There you go. Thank you. Which brings us to a total of 35. If you want to add it today, you can add in 2 more. Put us at 37 currently. Student positive cases. Last week we were, well, week 15, you see we were at 15, week 16, 17, which brought us to a total of 81 for the school year. Plus we've had an additional 10 today. Okay. Looking at our staff isolations and quarantines. Again, week 14, week 15, week 16, high weeks. I think we had an additional 6 today. You see our total there, okay? Of course, our student isolations and quarantines. Week 15, we had our highest school year at 150. Last week it tapered off, but still high, 101. And today, we have, for our student isolation and quarantines, we have around 45. Okay, so that's the rest of the week to go. Okay, and that's it. Any questions or?
Are these numbers just everywhere or in one certain area? Or is this through, I know some of this stuff is through the sporty sports and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Cause a bunch of this issue in these.
Yeah.
Yes, well, we've had 4 basketball teams, 4 varsity basketball teams now have had to go through isolations.
Well, actually, for varsity basketball teams, JV, there's domino effect of JV, and some there's a domino effect of middle school.
And in addition, we dealt with a off-season conditioning with soccer at a school that hit us pretty hard. There does not seem to be a pattern yet. And I say yet because that's what we watch every day, is to make sure that we don't have one school. But I will say that when you have a sports issue at a school, it tends to then trickle down and impact middle school and the elementary school in that area because of family quarantines that have to happen. Correct. So we certainly are watching these very close, and we there is no doubt the spread after Thanksgiving. The concern now, as we close down, is what will happen when we come back from Christmas break. Mm-hmm. There are a number of districts who are looking at modifying athletic participation and activities. If we continue to see the trend that we saw last week and into the first of this week, we may need to look at that also. So we may be modifying what we do with athletics for a period of time. Don't you know?
Darren Coleman here. I kind of just heard something throughout the community today. How strict are we monitoring capacity? For instance, when it comes to these basketball games, I heard that one of our schools seem to be pretty crowded. So how are we monitoring that? I know we talked about limited capacity, but are we really monitoring capacity?
Yes, sir. We most definitely are monitoring capacity, and we actually have had to close off access to some activities. But that is one of the things we're looking at, is a severe limiting of capacity. And that's not always the most popular thing, but some districts are going to, each player can bring 2 people with them to try to limit this spread. So we're going to continue to watch this. We may be implementing some pretty tight lockdowns.
Okay.
I'll go back to one. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I got one. Dr. Anderson, are we having any problems with the teachers, the teachers being out? Are we having any problems with getting substitutes in there for these classes?
We have the same substitute shortage that we had, over time. So I can't attribute the shortage to the pandemic right now, to be honest with you.
So we are struggling to find with 20 or however many teachers we were out. We are struggling to try and find substitutes for those classes.
We're always struggling to find substitutes, Mr. Deuce.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I would add that when the school year started, we implemented a thing where we have one on standby person per building that we pay. If we don't already have a person in the building who can be standby, we actually pay an additional sub to be there every day.
Okay. Thank you.
I know that we're talking about sports, but what schools we having the most problems with? Is it elementary, middle school? And seem like when we talk about athletes, we're talking about the high school. But when we look at these numbers, is there any school that's beginning to stick out like a sore thumb?
So, Mr. Sweeney, there's no particular school that sticks out right now. As we mentioned earlier, we have high school athletics. The problem is, again, it trickles down, and that high school will impact the students in the middle school as well as the elementary school based on close contacts and isolation and family. So not one particular school. It is really even across our district. with all of our areas, to be honest.
All right, thank you.
Well,
I just gonna go back to one question I had. I know in week 15 and week 16, on week 15, we had 150 quarantine. How many of that, I mean, I don't know if you got a percentage or something, I can just tell me, I ain't gonna have that, no matter what. For sports, is that contributed a lot to sports? What percentage is that for what I like to know, you know, something like that? I know that's the main contributor. Probably over a third. That's Thanksgiving. Yeah. But over a third could be tied back to athletics on week 15 after you put all those basketball situations together. I just wondering, this is the two highest numbers we've had.
If you took out athletics, those 3 weeks would still be highest.
Okay, I just know that was contributor. I didn't know.
Right.
I'm trying to look at things. Anyone else? All right, thank you, Dr. Anderson.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we're down to our next item. We're down to our curriculum report. Ms. Folsom.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Mr. Board.
Good evening.
I would like to highlight a few items from your November 2020 curriculum report. First of all, I'm happy to say that we will be having spelling bees, and our schools have already crowned their winners and their runners-up. We will be having our district spelling bee virtually on January the 14th. Each of the students will come to their respective schools, and they will go into a room and they will be given their words. They'll be able to write them, which I think is really cool. I have a hard time being able to spell words out loud, but they will actually be able to write the words. And then they will have someone that is monitoring them and will be checking those words. If we have a tie, they will go through a tiebreaker list. So I'm really excited to see how this works. We are going to participate in the PD spelling bee again, and all of our school winners will be able to participate in the PD virtually as well. It won't just be our district winner. Our academic challenge teams have also joined the PD because they are offering a virtual academic challenge matches. Chesterfield, Sherrall, and Central High School are all three participating. I'm happy to say they had their first match this past week on Wednesday, and all three of our schools won their respective matches. I'd also like to highlight virtual numbers for second semester. I think Dr. Goodwin shared with you a spread of our grade levels and the numbers of virtual students versus the number of face-to-face students. We dropped from first semester, we had about 42% virtual students. For second semester right now, it looks like we're gonna have about 24% virtual. Any questions?
Yes, I have a couple. It's not more or less related to your curriculum report, but the MAP testing that we did at the beginning of the school year, and then for middle school, that I'm assuming from everybody from first to eighth grade, that students took last week. What type of participation are we getting, especially from those students that are doing virtual school? Did we have 90 and 95% of all the students that took that math test last week? When we roll out and say you're doing the math test, and we did it in 2 days for virtual school, one half of the group came one day and a half of the group came another day, or is it too early to tell, or what?
We are still testing until the 18th. That will be our cutoff day for our MAP testing, so I do not have those numbers as of now. We are encouraging 100% participation, but of course, with having quarantines and isolations of students, some of our students may not be available to test before the 18th. So I don't know that we will have our 100% participation, but I can.
Okay. All right. My second question is, I know that we missed the testing at the end of the 20 school year back in May. We did take this back in September, and now we're taking it again in December. Will we be able to see where our kids is falling, how much they're falling behind, or whether they're staying even, or whether they maybe gain a point or two? I just want to know kind of where we are here. You hear this talk about students is going to lose a year in an academic, or half a year, or 18 months due to the virus, or what have you. I just, and I know that you all are monitoring this. I kind of like to know just where we are down the line. I'm not asking for it now, but down the line, I kind of like to see where we are as a district and how our students are performing.
Yes, we have some cut scores that we can compare to, national cut scores, or where they should score in the wintertime. And we can do some analysis in January once we have all of the scores.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, my congratulations, Mr. Chairman. My congratulations to Ms. Grooms, who retired from the adult education program, and I saw where Dr. Judge Stalling over there received the state award, and my congratulations goes out to him too. That's it.
All right. Moving on down to our next item, we're down to the superintendent report. Dr. Good.
Some of you who've been on the board for a while know that back in 2011, the town of Ruby leased the property across the street from the school for a period of time. Shortly after I came to the district, they asked to end that lease because they were having some problems taking care of their part of the maintenance and such of that. There certainly is a new group sort of running things in Ruby now, and they've come back to us and have asked if they could reinstate basically that same kind of lease for use. This lease would be off hours. School, of course, would have first use of the facilities. Anything that's erected, like playground equipment or whatever, has to be approved by the district. And, and then in trade for that, they help us with maintaining the property. And we certainly, as an administration, we're fine with that type of agreement. We have that type of agreement in other parts of the district. This lease, though, originally was done for 30 years. I would suggest, just so that we can monitor things better, that we go to a 5-year renewable lease for the town. But administration would recommend approval of a similarly worded lease. We get Dave Duff to draw it up and between us and the town council then. But we would recommend approval of that lease.
Second.
We got a motion and second on the floor. Any discussion?
Discussion, I got one question.
Go ahead.
My question is that in approving this lease, the lease is good for 5 years. Is that what you're recommending, Doc?
Yes, sir. I would be recommending approval for 5 years. And that's just so we can revisit it if we need to.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I'm clear. All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Not, all those in favor said motion, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Okay, in light of the numbers that we've been seeing, we plan to reopen in January on the same instructional schedule that we're doing now, K through 5, 5 days a week, face to face, middle and high school AD hybrid school, and we would start that on January 4th. Virtual students would start on January 6th. That is in line with the South Carolina Virtual School. We would start on the same date as them. We will put that out for public, start advertising that tomorrow so that families can plan. So also, Ms. Folsom's already mentioned virtual and face-to-face registration. That was a very smooth process. And be perfectly honest, we anticipated a lot of staffing issues making that change mid-year, but we've been able to accommodate virtually all of those staffing issues and all of those parent and student requests. So we feel good on that. Typically, we would bring you in December the 21-22 school calendar, but working with the teacher forum, we're going to wait until we come back after Christmas, really work on that calendar. Be honest, we've changed the 2021 school calendar enough times. We need a little more background information before we adopt next year's calendar. But they have been working on that, and we'll be ready. If not at the January 4th meeting, probably, the 11th meeting, they would be ready in our 25th special session when we review some things on budget and such. Would also remind you of a few school calendar issues. One that's not on your list is adult ed graduation is tomorrow night, Chesterfield Rubin Middle School. We will be recognizing all of the graduates from last academic year, as well as any graduates who have finished during this first semester. I would say that amazingly enough, we've already got more graduates this year than we had last year total. We passed 30 graduates last week, which is phenomenal for an adult education program the size of ours. We expect about 30 graduates to actually participate. It'll be set up very similar. It will be indoors in the cafeteria. It'll be set up very similar to the high school graduations where the families sit directly with the graduate. We will have an early dismissal day on Friday, December the 18th. And no one's looking more forward to that than I am at this point, just to be honest. Kids think they have one on me, but I'm more excited than they are. And then we will have our winter break from December 21st through January the 1st. Of course, the 1st is on the weekend, so we'll come back on Monday 4th. So, Mr. Chair, I think that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. This time, we're down to chairman comments. Our next scheduled meeting will be January 11th here at Palmetto Learning Center, or virtual. Second session will start at 5. The meeting will be at 5:30. Our following meeting will be on January 25th. That will be a board workshop session here at the district office at 5. Dr. Goodwin, you got any?
Yes, sir. We're going to bring you, obviously, whatever budget update we might have from the legislature. We also are going to bring you some detailed information on our technology initiative moving toward one-to-one. Dr. Hale will be presenting a good bit of information on that. And then we will also be bringing you some more detailed information on MACD facilities. We told you that we would go to work. That got delayed a little bit with the pandemic, but we are prepared to bring you some preliminary sketches of what we might be able to do at those two schools to plan for the future. So 3 major topics, each probably 30 to 40 minutes each.
Okay. All right. If no other business we have tonight, I would like to say I hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas. I know during these times, I hope we all struggle with some of these things we're having to deal with. I hope we are able to. Let me say, I hope the vaccine helps a lot of people, and I hope we're able to get over this bad time in the history of only our nation, but the whole world. This time, I need a motion to adjourn. Got a motion second. All those in favor say motion, saying aye.
Merry Christmas, all. Merry Christmas.